Everybody thinks their hips are tight. They stretch them, foam roll them, lacrosse ball them, pray over them. Hell, some of you treat your hips like a disobedient dog you keep trying to train with treats in YouTube tutorials. Look, here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Your hips are not tight. Your nervous system just doesn't want to trust you. Your brain is slamming the emergency brake because you're moved like a busted shopping cart. Tightness isn't the problem, it's a symptom. And you can stretch until your hamstrings write a restraining order. If the nervous system still thinks you're unstable, nothing changes. So today we're going straight to the engine, not the dashboard. We're going to give you 3 hip stabilization movements almost nobody trains, but every athlete needs if they want to stop collapsing under fatigue, stop grinding their lower back into paste, and finally build hips that actually hold up under load. Think of this as the anti-stretching gospel. This is how you bulletproof your hips from the inside out. Nervous system first, mechanics second, muscles third. When your hips feel tight, it's almost never a muscle shortening issue. It's a neuromuscular instability issue. Your brain detects instability, it restricts motion. You perceive that restriction as tightness. You're not tight, you're inhibited. This is Physiology 101, but dressed in a leather jacket. Your hip complex is a 3D stabilization engine. It has 360 degrees of rotational demand, torque demand, and load transfers that your nervous system has to manage in real time. If the brain detects that your glutes aren't firing well, the deep rotators aren't stabilizing, or the pelvis is rocking around like a boat in choppy water, it locks the hips down to keep you safe. Stretching in that state is like yanking on the emergency brake cable and wondering why the car still stops. So if the stretching isn't the fix, what is? Well, it's time to expose the 3 movements nobody uses, but every serious athlete needs. Now, these movements are not sexy, they don't look cool, you won't get TikTok likes if you do them, but they're probably the closest thing to a cheat code for hip durability and fatigue-proof stability. Why? Because they train deep system control and not superficial motions. They teach your brain to trust your hips again. Let's break down each one. Movement 1, the staggered hip lock hold. This is the king of anti-collapse mechanics. If I could force every athlete to do one movement for the rest of their life, this would probably be one of them. Because this teaches your hip the exact position it has to have under its own fatigue. The moment where most people crumble and double. Because this teaches your hip the exact position it has to own under fatigue. The moment where most people crumble and dump load into their lower back, knees, or ankles. So why does this work? Well, it trains your pelvic control in 3 planes at once. It activates the glute medius, deep rotators, your QL, and obliques as a team. It reinforces cross-body stabilization, which is critical for running and lifting. And it appeals directly to the nervous system as, oh, damn, we're stable now. We can allow more motion. So your brain is needing evidence, not optimism. The hip lock holds delivery evidence. So how do you perform this? Well, you need to stand tall, shift weight over one foot with a slight knee bend. Opposite hip comes into a controlled running pose, and the hips are squared. Core braces lightly, hold for 20 to 30 seconds without wobbling like a drunk flamingo. If you're shaking uncontrollably, that's your nervous system panicking because it's never actually tried to stabilize the hip before. Once the brain trusts this position, you're ready for movement 2, the one that turns your hips from decorative ornaments into rotational anchors. So movement 2 is the internal rotation step through. People avoid internal rotation because they think it's dangerous. Meanwhile, every step you take requires internal rotation. Every cut, squat, deadlift, run. So avoiding internal rotation is like refusing to turn your steering wheel because it feels weird. This works because it trains your hip capsule's mobility, rotational control, glute medius and minimus coordination, adductor contraction, and pelvic alignment during dynamic load. This is the antidote to the my knees cave in when I get tired phenomenon. Internal rotation is the forgotten god of hip stability. Here's how you do this. First you're going to do stand tall, as always. Step 1 foot behind and across slightly, letting the hip internally rotate. Keep the pelvis square. Do not let it spin. Feel the glute and adductor light up like someone just plugged you into a generator. Step back through and repeat rhythmically. It should feel like you're teaching your hips a new language because you are. And now that we have the hip can stabilize and rotate, it's time to make it produce force without collapsing. Movement 3 is the eccentric glute lock drop. The eccentric glute lock teaches your hips to control force, which is where most athletes break down. Not in the concentric, in the eccentric, the descent, the landing, the absorption phase. This is where injuries happen, technique collapses, and fatigue exposes your weaknesses. It works because the movement attacks eccentric glute loading, anti-valgus control, hip hinge coordination, pelvic bracing during descent, and load transfer through the posterior chain. So you're going to be teaching your hips to absorb force safely, not just generate it. And when your brain trusts your ability to absorb force, your tightness disappears faster than your motivation on leg day. Here's how you do this. Start in a single leg hip hinge position. Glute is engaged, hips level. Now descend slowly into the hinge while maintaining the locked pelvis, like you're lowering a heavy object onto a fragile surface. If your knee wobbles, if your pelvis spins, if you lose control, that's the entire point. You need to train that. So these are your three movements, but understanding them is not enough. You need to plug them into a system that your nervous system actually adapts to over time. So the system is where the actual magic happens. We don't just do random exercises like a hip-focused piñata party. We build progression the way the nervous system actually learns, from stability to rotation to eccentric control. This matches how motor cortex remaps movement happens. This matches tendon remodeling, it matches synaptic reinforcement load under load, and basic evolutionary biomechanics. So starting off with week 1 and 2, you're focusing on stabilization. You're going to just do the staggered hip lock hold for 3 by 20 seconds each side, daily, light, it's precise, no ego involved. Then you get into week 3 and 4, you're going to add your rotation in, your internal rotation step through. Try to do 3 to 10 each side, 3 to 4 days a week, you're aiming for control. Then weeks 5 and 6, you're adding eccentric control, your eccentric glute lock drop. You're doing 3 to 6 to 8 each side, 2 to 3 days a week with slow, smooth, and control. Once you own the basics, then you can combine the movements. You can do a hip lock to step through to eccentric drop, then return to lock. This will teach your hips to stabilize, rotate, absorb force, and then restabilize in one sequence. The exact pattern your hips use while running, lifting, sprinting, and moving under fatigue. It's going to be your holy grail for hip mechanics. Now let's address the truth nobody wants to hear. Why your hips actually fail under fatigue and why these 3 movements fix it better than stretching ever will. Reason number 1, motor pattern degradation. After 50 reps, your glutes stop firing with precision. Your hip rotators go offline, your nervous system switches to a survival mode. You fold inward. These movements will restore stability even under stress. Reason number 2, pelvic drift. Your pelvis starts rolling around like a carnival ride. This destroys power transfer. So the hip block with eccentric control fixes this. Reason number 3, delayed muscle recruitment. Your brain doesn't recruit stabilizers fast enough. There's a lag, and in that lag is where your knee clamps, your groin pulls, and your back tweaks live. Internal rotation work erases that lag. Reason number 4, force absorption failure. You can produce force, but you cannot absorb it cleanly. This is why runners downfall, every lifter's plateau, every weekend warrior's torn something. The eccentric glute lock drop is that antidote. You get good at this, you will have performance benefits. You will have stronger squats, stronger deadlifts, more powerful sprints, cleaner change of direction, less knee pain, less lower back pain, better posture under fatigue, better running economy, better athletic longevity. So you're not just fixing tight hips, you're building a load-bearing, force-absorbing, fatigue-resistant human chassis. That's bulletproof hips. Here's your take-home, the part people skip, the part that determines if this actually works for you. Don't watch this and say, cool info. That's how you stay tight forever. Pick one movement today. Hip lock hold, step through, eccentric drop. Do it for 5 minutes. Tomorrow, add the next. Within a week, your hips will feel like they've been rebuilt from the inside out. This isn't stretching. This is nervous system engineering. If you want bulletproof hips, you train the engine first, not the dashboard. And that's exactly what we're doing here.